I am here with MLW's filthy Tom Lawlor. Tom, MLW's been making a lot of big moves lately. It seems like every week I get an update and it's like, oh, they're running Battle Riot or they're running War Games or they've got the New Heart Foundation going. How do you feel that you're fitting into MLW so far? Because you are one of those big additions.
Yeah, so far so good on my end. Being in pro wrestling for such a short time on the independent circuit, I wasn't quite sure what opportunities would come my way, but very early on I was hit up by the people running MLW and kind of informed that there would be a show, the One Shot show. And then after that took off, they brought me on board. And being a former fan, actually, of MLW in the past, this was quite an interesting opportunity for me to get into and sink my teeth into, and I'm very happy to have done it.
I think it's kind of wild how your career and Seth Petrozelli's have kind of woven in and out like over the years. What's it been like to kind of have him around the wrestling scene as well?
Well, it's been pretty cool having one of my best friends involved in MLW early on, although his role has kind of changed over the course of time. Unfortunately, I think due to some of his, past exploits and some of the stuff I was involved in fighting-wise, he's no longer available to compete. So unfortunately, he's been kind of forced to take a back seat when it comes to in-ring action. But hopefully, we can continue on the storyline of him being the game plan guy and the sensei for Team Filthy in the future.
Now, it's clear you're a longtime wrestling fan. When was the first time you looked at pro wrestling and you're like, this is something I want to do? I mean, you had some matches before your UFC career even, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, I've been watching pro wrestling ever since I can remember. I can't tell you a time in my life where I remember not watching pro wrestling. And I was a big fan of sports, all around when I was growing up, and pro wrestling was kind of another sport I followed. But as I got a little bit older and, realized I wasn't going to be big enough to play basketball, and, something about team sports kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I like having my own fate in my hands, so to speak, and wrestling is a sport. Amateur wrestling is a sport in which you can kind of take your career is your responsibility. You're going to get out what you put into it. And mixed martial arts and pro wrestling are also very similar in that aspect. So I don't necessarily have to rely on other people, and that's not something I really want to do. I want to be in control of my own destiny.
So pretty early into your pro MMA career, you got on Tough, and then you found yourself in the UFC where you remained until this year. Was that why you never followed up and had any matches after that? At least for several years, you weren't involved in pro wrestling.
Yeah, I had a WWE tryout back when they had the Deep South developmental territory, and they also had OVW at the time. And I basically was just kind of cast it off. And I'm sure many wrestlers have had similar experiences after having tryouts with WWE, where you're kind of left out in limbo, and you don't really know what they thought or what they wanted from you, or what they were looking for during the tryout. And it left pretty much a bad taste in my mouth. And like I said, I'm the type of person that wants to be able to control my own destiny. I don't like having people, taking away opportunities from me necessarily that I deserve. So I looked at it as an opportunity for me to go into mixed martial arts and kind of, control my future. And I just, fell out of love with wrestling for a few years. And it wasn't until about 3 years later that I really started, I became less bitter about it and, more understanding of the business aspects of it, and really just changed my mindset on it and fell in love with it again.
You had mentioned your tryout. Who reached out to you about your tryout, and what, if any, feedback did you get, and what kind of experience was that WWE tryout like?
I was set up through General Briscoe because of my amateur wrestling background.
Oh, yeah.
And I had actually fought mixed martial arts. My first fight was in 2003 when I was 20 years old. So it's not as if I was like in pro wrestling and then left and went and did MMA. I mean, they've both been kind of interwoven throughout my entire life. So, I was basically looking for the best opportunity for myself at the time and I went to the WWE tryout for a week. I was up in McDonough, Georgia, and it was a situation where I was really young, but I mean, the management there, like, didn't give me any feedback. Basically, I just ran drills over and over and over again. And I'll be honest, I was doing the drills better than a lot of the guys who were there under contract who were just mailing it in and phoning it in because they were collecting money. And seeing those guys half-ass it, I'm there for a week busting my ass and get, absolutely no feedback. Instead, I just got choke slammed about 300 times by a fake cane at the time, and then sent back home on my way. Was told to reach out to Bill DeMott and call him. I got that call. That didn't work out in my favor. I called him, nothing. Eventually, Gerald Briscoe called me back and said, "Hey, look, we want you to work on your character, this and that, and we'll give you a call back in a few months." And fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, I realized that there were other opportunities, and I had to make a living, so I began teaching high school at the time, and also began training to fight once again, and that became the better opportunity for me at that time.
They flirted with bringing in MMA guys for quite a while. I mean, they had Ron Waterman. A lot of people don't remember him, but
yeah.
He had
the
like
H2O man.
Yeah, he had a bunch of dark matches for them. We do a thing where we apply commentary over some dark matches, and he's on like all of them. And once you get past the clotheslines, it's like all downhill from there. And they had Daniel Puder in there, Sylvester Turkai. They had a few guys over the years, but now it seems like they're really embracing more of the right kinds. Like Matt Riddle for one, but I know that you had some stuff with Ring of Honor, but that came to an abrupt ending. Why was that exactly?
I was told by the UFC not to go back there. TMZ put out a report saying that I was close to signing with Ring of Honor, which was not the case. They had asked me to come in and do some more managing gigs with Red Dragon, and being the person that I am, I thought, well, you know what, I'll let the UFC know what I'm doing, rather than just do it and ask for forgiveness. I asked for permission, and I was told not to do it. So lo and behold, I did not do it, and Shayna Baszler took my place, and well, it worked out pretty good for her.
So I heard your discussion about the Jon Jones ruling last week, and obviously you have plenty of reason to be disappointed and upset considering the situation you went through, which isn't that much unlike, you obviously, Brock Lesnar's a huge pay-per-view draw, but he was doing both at the same time. UFC will change their tune based on who the person is. Considering, we've got a guy even now, granted he wasn't in the UFC, but the fellow who beat Renan Barão a couple days ago, he's like, I was almost homeless in this sport before I got this call.
Yeah.
And Junior Albini, who said he was giving his kids shampoo bottles to play with.
Yeah.
The disparity is extreme for people who are appearing on national TV. How do you think that will change, or will it change?
It's not going to change. The fighters are fucked when it comes to the UFC. I mean, let's be honest. You can't sit here and sugarcoat it anymore. This is not a fucking sport. It's just whatever the UFC wants to do. The commission's are in on it. USADA is in on it. It's disgusting. It's bullshit. If it's going to be entertainment, just have it be entertainment. Don't do this under the disguise of a sport and say that it's based on fair competition. That's why USADA's there. That's not the case at all. Don't give me that shit when Jon Jones, who should be getting 40 years, is getting off because USADA just did exactly whatever they wanted in this case. They never came to me and said, hey, you want to rat somebody out? You want to give us some more information on testing, and then we'll give you a break? Hell no. They never came to me and said that. Instead, they fucking ran me through the ringer. They gave me 2 years. They screwed me over. They took 2 years of my life away. And then the UFC at the end of it just says, you know what? After this, you already asked for your release a year ago. We didn't give it to you. We figure since you've been asking for a fight for about a month now, we're going to string you along. And if you feel like it, maybe we'll give you one, but more than likely we'll just cut you at the end. And that's exactly what they did. And, I mean, if you continue not too happy about it, it changed the course of my life for 2 years for the most part. Who knows where I'd be right now if they had cut me, 2 years ago when they asked, or what the case would be. It's changed the course of my life. It changed the course of my wrestling career. it's basically upended everything.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize as that happened. I mean, you had a very, very close decision fight against Corey Anderson, in which many people thought that you won. So, I mean, we see where he is. He's in the top 10 of that division.
Yes. I get my release papers, and it says, we are releasing you in part due to your last loss. Well, what's the other part? Is it the fact that I signed the Project Spearhead card? Does that have something to do with it? Is it the fact that I didn't sign the release form that you guys were sending me while I've been suspended for 2 years for my likeness rights? Is that the deal? Why don't you tell me exactly why you cut me? Because if you're going to say it's because I lost my last fight to Corey Anderson, a guy who's on a roll, a guy who's ranked, pretty high up in the division, in a division where you are lacking stars and you're just moving up 185-pounders to headline shows, you're going to tell me that's because I lost a close decision to one of the top guys in that division that you're cutting me? Fuck that.
Are you as surprised as I was that Cajun Johnson got the fight against Khabibulov? Because I thought for sure they were cutting him after he lost to Islam Makhachev. And I don't think it's a coincidence that they're putting him in there with killers.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised by anything.
Yeah, because I mean, he's been very outspoken about Project Spearhead and that
okay, here's another
thing.
Dana White's going around saying Logan Paul is never getting in the UFC, that it would be a joke. Are you fucking kidding me? He's more qualified than CM Punk.
Yeah, that's actually.
And you sat there and you tried to pass that off as a realistic competitor for years. So you pulled the wool over your own eyes, knowing what the deal was, and now you're going to say Logan Paul doesn't deserve it. Hell, he's probably going to bring more viewers in than CM Punk. Don't pick and choose. What you're going to do when you're trying to promote this as a sport.
Yeah, that was actually Cajun. I remember while he was out with injury, confronted CM Punk at a Q&A and was like, "You shouldn't be here," and et cetera. And Dana White actually brought that up. He said, "Well, CM Punk, people will bring that up, but I think with good reason." And when I was talking to Matt Riddle about this, CM Punk, I couldn't believe that he had been with a camp the quality of Rufus Sport for 2 years. There was nothing.
Exactly.
He looked significantly worse against Mike Jackson than he did against Mickey Gall. And Mickey Gall and Mike Jackson aren't even in the same planet as far as talent. So I see a guy who looked like he got worse, and Matt had said to me, he's like, well, how many punches do you think that CM Punk really got off? Because he's not punching Anthony Pettis or Sergio Pettis in that gym. He's not not if they don't let him. What do you think contributed the most to that? I mean, it was a real, I think, at least in the first fight, I could see him kind of fighting the choke a little bit. It seemed like what little skill he had, completely evaporated in the last year or so.
I mean, I really don't want to talk about this too much because there's not that much to talk about. He's just not a good fighter.
Yeah.
You can't pick up mixed martial arts at that point in your life and expect to be successful coming in with no amateur wrestling background, no amateur fighting background, no amateur sports background to begin with. I mean, nothing. I mean, I don't know how you can expect yourself to be competitive in any real sport without being competitive first, especially you're going to put him in the highest levels with the highest level competitors in mixed martial arts, or what are supposed to be the highest level competitors in mixed martial arts, and he's got 3 or 4 years to play catch up. It's just not going to work. And for the UFC, and even more so, forget the UFC, they're a promotion. What the fuck are commissions there for?
Yeah.
The commission won't let Ali Quinta, they won't let Paul Felder fight against Khabib Nurmagomedov on short notice, but you'll throw CM Punk in there? You're going to tell me that that's safer? CM Punk fighting somebody, an untrained guy in his 30s picking up the sport, that's going to be safer than having Paul Felder fight Khabib?
Mickey Gall, who at that point had 5 fights between amateur and pro and had been training for about 8 years, 7, 8 years. I think he started training boxing at 13. So he had been in and out of the fight game for a long time. This is a question that I ask a lot of people who make the transition from MMA. How often do you have guys that you work with or that are on the same shows as you want to kind of test their skills, maybe ahead of a show, just separately on their own? And has there been anybody that surprised you with their skills?
Nobody wants to roll with me before the show. Nobody's ever asked that.
Really?
No, not even close. Not even close. And actually, Eddie Kingston called me out. He's he's trained by one of my best friends, Sensei Jason. And he called me out to train one day, and I showed up. And lo and behold, he was nowhere to be.
I see.
So Eddie Kingston's the one guy that called me out, and then he no-showed. So.
Yeah, see, I see some of the guys on this roster, and like there's Davey Boy Smith Jr., and I know he learned a lot from Billy Robinson.
Okay. I have trained with Davey Boy.
Okay.
And he's very good.
Yeah,
but that was in a separate situation. Like
sure.
He was getting ready for a competition, and he was in Las Vegas. So.
But even like there are guys that I've seen Simon Gotch and Chad Gable do a little bit of chain wrestling, and that was cool. And you've got like Jake Hager, who's in and out of there, and obviously his wrestling credentials are pretty outstanding. Matt would tell me he would say that like there were some people here and there. So there's never anybody that's just like, yeah, maybe we can try sometime. But Kingston obviously didn't show up.
No, I think he's more of a street fighter, anyways. But there are some guys like Tracy Williams, Hot Sauce Tracy Williams.
Yeah.
I would 100% say that he could go in there and handle himself just after being in the ring with him a few times.
How about Stokely Hathaway? Could he handle himself?
It depends if I'm playing heel or face, what the answer is going to be on that one. I'd say, if I had to pick, I'd say Kingston. There's another guy actually up in the Pacific Northwest named Julian White who surprised me quite a bit when we were out there just chain wrestling. So I'm sure a guy like Jonathan Gresham as well would do quite well.
I think he's one of the best wrestlers in North America right now. He is incredible.
Yeah. And he's one of those guys who, it's like, if I can get in there without a ton of stuff called and be able to have a match, well, that tells me that guy could probably do it on the fly in a real situation as well. So, guys, like I said, like Tracy Williams, John Gresham, those guys would probably be at the top of my list.
As we wrap up, you mentioned how UFC has developed into entertainment essentially. You were really ahead of the curve on that. Your weigh-ins were something that everybody looked forward to. Were there any wrestling inspired, movie inspired anything, weigh-in entrances so to speak, that you didn't have the opportunity to do that you wanted to?
You would probably, and many people would probably be absolutely amazed at the process that I go through to do these entrances, because it is like last second with an hour to go before the weigh-in or before the walkout that I'm out there searching for stuff at thrift stores. The problem for me is that I have too many ideas.
Yeah.
And I really don't, and I don't know which one is going to be the best at any certain time. So sometimes I just have to kind of play it on the fly. Like 2012, I believe, I fought in Sweden, and I did a little bit of research and found out, well, lo and behold, Silence of the Lambs was like one of the biggest movies of all time there. Yeah. So I'd always wanted to come out to Goodbye Horses. So I came out to that song, and I come out, and the crowd, it's in Sweden, I'm facing a guy from Europe, but the crowd's clapping along with that song. And, I just thought to myself, well, all it takes is 10 minutes of research sometimes to find out what's going to be the best thing for that crowd. And you have to know the crowd as well. So.
As we wrap up, I've really been enjoying MLW. They're doing a lot of things differently, but they're bringing back some tried and true formulas. What stands out the most to you about the environment at MLW? Because I love how they put their show up on YouTube as well. There's no excuse for people to not watch the show. Anybody can see it. But what has your experience been like, and what do you take from that?
One of the best things about MLW, and I think this goes for a lot of wrestling right now at this time and point, is that people are willing to help each other. It's not a situation in which I feel like I'm backstage, I'm competing against the other guys in the locker room for a spot or for an opportunity. It's like I want to see every single guy out there do their best, because it's going to make the entire show better. And 10 years ago, back on the indie scene, it wasn't like that on the wrestling scene. You had people fighting each other. There was a lot of politicking going on, and now it's just it's a different environment. I think there's been a generational change, obviously, and people kind of understand that if more people show up at the show because everybody is helping each other, then that in turn is going to make the show better. It's going to put more money in the wrestlers' pockets and create more opportunities, and that's kind of what's been happening. As there's been that shift in dynamics, I guess. One thing too, and I bring this up virtually every time I do an interview about MLW is I think MLW does a great job of playing the gray area better than the other wrestling companies. And especially I can pinpoint myself when it comes to this. The filthy Tom Lawlor character, sometimes he's seen as a heel, sometimes he's seen as a face, but it's not as if I stray necessarily from what I'm doing. I'm not changing my persona. It's just each individual situation. You're not always going to be the antagonist, or you're not always going to be the protagonist. Different people have different ideas. Different people have different personalities, and not everybody identifies with every single person. So, you know, you can see in some of the feuds, I may come off as a babyface. Some of them I may come off as more of a heel, but I'm portraying the same character that whole time. You know, I'm not confusing the fans. It just depends on what situation I'm put into. So, and I don't really see that with other wrestling companies as much.
Let the people know where they can watch MLW and also where they can find you on social media. You do some stuff with F4W as well.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Filthy Tom Lawlor, on Instagram as well at Filthy Tom Lawlor, Filthy4 Daily on Wrestling Observer / Figure 4 Wrestling online. And of course, check out MLW on YouTube. In a few weeks, it's actually next week, I've got a big match coming up against Shane Strickland in New York for Fury Road. And this is a big opportunity for me. Obviously, Shane Strickland, former champion, making his name throughout promotions all across the world. And, you know, this is my chance to not only prove that I am the future of what MLW has to offer, but that right now I'm prepared to be the present.